It's Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio. Here's Jeff Parles and Alex White.
Welcome in, Sports by the Book. It's a Saturday morning, week number 5. Yes, 5 in college football. How about that? I'm Jeff Parles. Alex White is here as well. It just motors right along, right?
It really does. It needs to slow down a little bit, but another good card, some really good matchups, and we'll give all our opinions here.
Yeah, this will be a very interesting weekend in college football. Of course, because of conference realignment, we're basically now at a point where we're going to get one mega matchup a week. This week, we'll talk about at the end of the show because we go through these games in rotation number order. Alabama and Georgia's 201 and 202. That's fourth from the bottom on the Vegas sheet. So we'll discuss Alabama and Georgia maybe a little bit earlier than usual, but we'll also have our full predictions when Vinny Magliulo joins us at about 8:45 this morning. But you mentioned it, awesome card, and we got 30-plus games to get to today. Let's dive right in. I don't think my shirt's giving away anything in this game, even though Stanford does wear the color I'm wearing, Alex White. The Cardinal on the road on the East Coast for the second consecutive week. Of course, last week they go to the Dome, upset Syracuse on a Friday night. Now they go to Clemson, the shade of orange, back-to-back weeks for the opponent for Stanford. And here they are. It has been mostly Clemson action behind us. Open 22, quick down to 21.5, and now back up to 23. And the market is, I would not be shocked based off how the market's going. Well, this market is 22.5 at a high and 23.5 at, 23.5 at a high, 22.5 at a low. We could see 24 maybe by the time this game kicks at some shops.
I was really looking to bet the under here, Jeff, with such a high total for a Clemson game, 58, how things have changed. But, I mean, if you look at their pass defense, they're marked 110th in the country, rush defense 95th, and then scoring an average of 42.7 points per game. So didn't want to go there, didn't want to go against the steam and the over. And Stanford, like you mentioned, they've been better than expected. So nothing for me in this one, but I am, if it gets any higher, I will be going under.
I'm looking for reasons to bet Stanford. I just can't get there because Clemson, other than the second half against Georgia this year, has honestly looked much better than I would have expected. They obviously Appalachian State not as good as we thought. They destroyed them. NC State not as good as we thought, destroyed them. But you know what? Clemson's had problems doing that the last 2 years, especially a year ago. If we somehow see a 24 by the time this game kicks, I will take it with Stanford. If not, look for an in-game scenario when this gets above 30 because it probably will, especially if Clemson scores early and often in this one in Death Valley. All right, let's go to the battle of the state of Georgia. Now what you're thinking, not Georgia Tech, Georgia. No, Georgia Southern and Georgia State. These two, don't throw out how big of a rivalry this is. And that's no BS. These two teams hate each other and have for a very long time going back to their FCS days. Alex, I will tell you this, because this number was an early week mover. And yes. I'm mad at myself that I didn't, when the numbers came out early in the week at other shops, there was some pick out in the market. And I thought that was way off. I'm pretty aggravated myself. I didn't take some of it on Georgia State when it was a pick. Chris and company opened on Monday, of course. They opened at 3, which I think is the more proper number. Bouncing all over the place, back to the 3, 58 your total. I wonder if that's where you're going today on that total.
No, it's not. And we're actually on opposite sides here.
Taking the points with Georgia Southern. All right.
I'm going against this team. I thought pick was the correct number for them to open. I think that these two are very evenly matched. I think it's just an overreaction. Georgia State did upset Vandy. That's the last thing people saw. And the last thing people saw from Georgia Southern is them getting blown out by Ole Miss, who is a top 5 team in my power rating. So, I think this game is going to be evenly matched. It's a rivalry. I took the 3.5. Unfortunately, there's no more 3.5s out there, but I still like it 3. I think that this is going to be a very tight game down to the end.
Would you sprinkle money line on Georgia Southern too, or no?
I should.
Why not?
I have not.
Why not? Take it small. Why not? Again, this is a gigantic, like we sometimes, especially with conference realignment, mock sometimes fake rivalries. This is not a fake one. This one is as good of a non-power conference rivalry as there is, period, in college football. I'm excited to see how this one goes down in Atlanta today. Alex is on Georgia Southern, the road dog in that big game in Georgia. All right, let's go up to Raleigh. Northern Illinois, of course, a few weeks ago, upset Notre Dame's, toasted a town, and then they flip around and lose at home to Buffalo as a 13-point favorite last week. Now on the road at NC State. The way this game has been bet, Alex, the assumption is that Grayson McCall is going to be healthy enough to go for NC State. Chris and company of 8. The rest of the market was at 8 last night. Now it's back down to 7, which it basically has been 7 other than about 12 hours or so over the last few days. I bet Northern Illinois at 7. I took a little more at 8. It's just a fate of NC State. Could NC State finally show up and look like a top 25 team for the first time this year? Maybe. Not counting on it. And Northern Illinois is back in that familiar role. You can't discount just how hard it is to go from uber underdog to a big favorite, and now you're back in the familiar role as an underdog here for Northern Illinois.
You don't happen to have Chris Felica's notes on this, do you? And Northern Illinois and how they have won, not only covered, but
I know what you're talking. Let me pull it up real quick, but I know what you're talking about.
This one was really hard to handicap. When I saw the 6, I know my dad was on NC State with the news that Grayson McCall should be back, and a lot of sharps were, but I just wasn't brave enough to lay the points here from what we have seen with NC State this year. I mean, lost to Tennessee 51-10, and then coming off that Clemson loss 59-35, which I thought they could hang in there with the Clemson team. So just laying the points with NC State is what really threw me off here. If I was getting points with them in any other situation, but...
You ask, you shall receive. Chris Felica, 2 days ago during his Bear Bites that he gives out on Thursdays for college football the week ahead. In its last 12 games as an underdog, Northern Illinois is 10-2 ATS with winning outright 6 times, including 3-0 in their last 3 outright as an underdog. So they've been the giant killers so far, especially over the last dozen for Thomas Hammock's squad, and on the road again against the ACC. All right. How about a team that scored 70 last week, Alex White? James Madison welcomes Ball State. Sam Panayonovich's preseason over, by the way, in the MAC, as we've talked about with him. This is a big line. This opened 20.5 on JMU. You're up to 22 now. Total is actually, this is a very weird one. This line has gone up. This total has gone down from 58 to 56. I'm curious what direction you're going here in this one, Alex.
Nothing for me in this one. I thought the numbers were just right. I made James Madison a 20-point favorite here. It's pretty much where it opened now. Some backing there. And the total very close. A little bit of a lean to the under, but I mean, with what we saw from James Madison last week, putting 70 on North Carolina, I didn't jump in on that under either.
I would say this. The way this game has been bet has been a little bit perplexing for me. This feels like a game where you want to go against James Madison, where you put up 70 on a Power 4 last week. Quite frankly, they could have scored more, but UNC stopped turning the ball over as well. But this is a lot of points. Now, is Ball State good enough to play this game within 3 touchdowns? I think that's a genuine question to ask, because what we've seen from Ball State this year has not been good at all. Getting blown out by Miami, losing last week to a Central Michigan team that's really not good at all, and barely beating an FCS in Missouri State week 1. But this would be a lean to Ball State for me. And if you can, there's multiple 22.5s in the market. Let's see how high this gets. You got about 2 hours until kick. This is one of those weirdly placed 1:30 Eastern, 10:30 Pacific games. You got some time. See where this gets. If it gets to 23, yeah, I think you can justify hopping in on the Cardinals in this one. All right, well, the opponent that gave up 70 to JMU's up next. That's North Carolina on the road at Duke. I know I'm tempting fate on this. I brought this up on Punchlines yesterday. We got Ann's Duke voodoo in the corner here today, Alex White. I bet North Carolina yesterday at +2. Now, I did not get the best of the number, but I'm doing better than the number is now. North Carolina even flopped to a favorite at some books this morning. That has now come back. Duke is 1 behind us. Other shops, they're as high as 1.5. This game is as low as a pick. Total's 55.5. And again, we all know this is usually a hardwood rivalry, but this rivalry on the gridiron also awesome as well on Tobacco Road.
I think I'm going against or tempting fate in the other way, though, because I wanted to back North Carolina. I made this game pick. 2 just wasn't enough to get there. And after that blowout against James Madison, I figured that they would be ready for this game. I'm going with the under, though, and that's what's scary as well, because we haven't seen their defense look like North Carolina defense. But I think that they will improve here and be ready for this rivalry. I went under 56.5. I think it's still good at 55. I made it 50, so that's still a 5-point difference there for me. But yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking, but since they don't have Max Johnson at under center at quarterback for North Carolina, they just haven't been the same offensively, and I think their defense will step up here in this one.
I'm going to be honest with you on the Duke side. I have no idea what to make out of this team. I have no clue. They're 4-0.
Yeah.
This was a team with one of the lowest win totals in all of Power 4. They win today. They go over the win total, most of their win totals that were out there, Alex. I just don't know what to make of them, because other than the blowout against Middle Tennessee last week, they haven't been overly impressive. Beat only UConn, who's not any good, by 5. We're fortunate to beat Northwestern in overtime. 26-3 against Elon. You don't know anything about that. North Carolina, though, I'm concerned about that defense. And I know that comes without saying after giving up 70 last week. But again, we've seen this with Mac Brown, where North Carolina's defense just randomly and out of the blue, because their defense has been totally reasonable so far before that game last week through the first 3 games, didn't allow more than 20 in any game. You just see this every once in a while where their defense just forgets how to play. Now, they did give up 4 touchdowns off of turnovers last week, but still, that's still 42 points without those turnovers that weren't off of turnovers a week ago. All right, let's go to Bloomington. I mean, I don't think we expected this game to have as much eyeballs on it as it does going into today. Indiana undefeated 4-0, looking real good doing it as well. They host the Terps. Alex, a few weeks ago, this was kind of a similar spot where the shoe was on the other foot with Maryland. They were a bigger favorite at home than we expected because they destroyed UConn week 1. You were on Michigan State that day. Michigan State not only covered, they won the game outright. Shoe's kind of on the other foot here with Maryland, a 7 or a 7.5 point underdog at 7 behind us. Most of the market 7.5 now. Are you looking to Maryland here in this one now with the shoe on the other foot as a dog against an overachiever so far?
It is very tempting, but I have not done anything yet. I made that number right at 7, but Maryland, I mean, they're not a pushover team. They're 32nd in the nation in points per game at 33.7, 30th in the nation in yards per game at 453. So, I mean, I think they can hang around in this game with Indiana. So if you're getting a full touchdown, it is very tempting. But, I mean, Indiana's, they're really fun. It's been fun to see this run that they are on with Signetti there and the change that they have made. 10th in points allowed per game so far this year throughout 4 weeks. So that's a little nerve-wracking there, too, because their defense has been very good.
Curtis Rourke has been excellent at the quarterback position so far for Indiana. Again, this is a hard spot for the Hoosiers. A touchdown favorite in a conference game. It's an unfamiliar position for this program. Now, the DNA of the program is very different now than it has been over the last few years. New coach, as Alex mentioned, and Signetti has really made this a quick switch there in Bloomington. I'm a little aggravated with myself. There were 6.5s yesterday for about 2.5 hours last night. Didn't play it. Thought, all right, well, since it moved to 6.5, it's probably going to go down to 6. No. It's gone the other way. 6.5 I thought was good on Indiana. Now, not interested in laying a touchdown or more at home.
So you are leaning more towards the home team here.
I'm with the public on this game. I don't buy Maryland. I really don't. And that's a coaching staff. Loxley's fine. He's a good offensive coach, but I don't love him as a head coach. He seems to do less with a good amount of talent than a lot of coaches there in the Big Ten. All right, let's go to Orlando next, Alex White. Deion Sanders in Colorado make a trip to not quite the happiest place on earth, but the bounce house can be the happiest place on earth for Knight fans. 14 behind us. Alex, it's the last 14 in the market. All those are gone. It's gone below it finally. It's 13.5. This one has been all over the joint, basically. been a toddler behind us. 14, 13 and a half, 13, 14, 13 and a half the whole week. 61 to total, and at least what should be a fun game in Orlando.
So I am on Colorado here with the 14.5 points. I think you're still okay with 2 touchdowns. You mentioned it yesterday, actually, on your Football Frenzy. And if there is a weakness with UCF's defense, it is their pass defense. And on the other side, we know that Colorado is passing more than any team in the nation. So, I mean, they've got to succeed there, but I think they can hang around in this one. I know they're coming off a big overtime win, which kind of scares me a little bit, but I think Deion Sanders will have his team ready for this one to at least hang tight. I made Central Florida a 10-point favorite, so it was an automatic grab on the points. And there's not a lot of dogs today, I'm going to be honest, so I had to kind of dig deep, and I had to take some maybe not so pretty dogs.
I'm happy you said that last part, because at the beginning of the week, when I go through my stuff on Sunday night after the market's matured a little bit, we'll let the true professional bettors be the market setters when Circa puts those out early on Sunday. Mm-hmm. I had the same thought as you. I have way too many favorites this week, and that is always a scary sign in college football, especially with how the season has gone. I'm with you. This is one of the dogs. Now make sure you're betting 14. Don't go below 14. 14's the bottom that you can do. If Central Florida has one weakness on defense, it's their pass defense. We saw it 2 weeks ago against TCU. Until TCU stopped playing, Josh Hoover and company did whatever they wanted in the pass game. Colorado's a lot of flaws. We know this. But the thing they do have is an elite quarterback and an elite pass catcher. I kind of like this total over, too. I'm surprised this game got bet to the under the way it has. Lean to the over. Colorado at 14 I still think is good. Alex, good job on getting the hook and the best number with the Buffs. This feels like a one-score game where Central Florida wins a tight one, more so than anything in Orlando. Central Florida, by the way, outside shot to make it to Arlington at this point with the way that Utah, we still don't know Cam Rising's status. Don't worry, we'll get to them later. And Kansas State got clocked last week by BYU. Oklahoma State, of course, lost to Utah. Mm-hmm. Those old stalwarts in the Big 12 on hard times at the moment after bad weeks a week ago. Let's keep it moving here. Let's go. This was injury news yesterday. The market has matured a little bit on this game. So Thomas Castellanos is out for Boston College. He won't play. This game, Alex, was 13 until yesterday morning when it was clear people had some intel. Ooh. And it shot all the way down to 7.5 now on this game, and that's market-wide, including behind us. Total was 48. It's funny. At the beginning of the week, Alex White, with a healthy Castellanos, I like this game over.
Me too.
And now we're a whole touchdown shy of where it opened. Again, I can't really do it without their star quarterback there, and it's not like Western Kentucky is going to really help me against that defense.
No, and I really didn't even know that he was questionable. So
came out of nowhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was listening to you guys' show yesterday and heard that because I have all my notes about what a big improvement he has made from last year in Castellanos. And Bill O'Brien has done a great job here at Boston College. So originally, I'm with you. It was a lean to the favorite, lean to the over. But yeah, there's nothing you can really do now. 48's pretty low, though. I mean, I think they might still be able to get there even without him. But we don't know much about the quarterback stepping in.
So the quarterback for Boston College is Grayson James, who had some time at FIU 2 years ago. Not a lot of action, played in less than 5 games. So not much, as Alex said, on the quarterback situation for Boston College against Western Kentucky. All right, let's go to West Lafayette next. Purdue hosting Nebraska. Why have the bettors like Purdue so much this year?
Another
Alex?
ugly dog.
I mean, just the last 2 weeks, all over them against Notre Dame, lose by 50. All over them last week against Oregon State, lose pretty comfortably. Now, they're still on them this week, not as aggressively as they were the last 2 weeks. Open 10.5, got as high as 11. Now back to 10 with Purdue at home against Nebraska, who's coming off, again, a crushing loss at home against Illinois in overtime.
This is tough, Jeff, because I'm on the right side as the Sharps as well. I made Nebraska 7. That's a 3-point difference, but that blowout loss against Notre Dame really threw me off here with Purdue. I tried to look into it. Hudson Card, quarterback for Purdue, has been pretty good, 63.5%. Passing percentage, 6.9 yards per play, but then there is the 6-3 touchdown interception ratio that you have to be careful with. And we know Matt Rule is a really good coach for Nebraska, but this is their first road game for a freshman quarterback who has been very good. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a play on the number here, grabbing that 10.
I'm surprised at how bad Purdue has looked the last 2 weeks. And now, I'm not saying that people were justified in betting them the last 2 weeks and moving those numbers down. I'm just surprised they've looked like the worst team in the Big Ten the last 2 weeks. I don't think they are. I think Northwestern is the worst team in that conference right now. Sorry, in-laws. But I've expected more out of Ryan Walters. And you mentioned Hudson Card. Hudson Card is not a terrible quarterback, and he's looked bad the last 2 weeks. So, again, I'm not touching this because Purdue scares me, but it is kind of weird to see Nebraska this big of a favorite on the road in conference play, especially after what happened to them a week ago. I'm just bringing this up real quick. This was a late ad. Sorry, Sean. Florida State and SMU because the numbers moved. At some shops back to 6. Chris and company have stayed at 6 this whole time. I did bet Florida State plus the 6. So that's just a quick hey, Florida State on that one against SMU. You don't even have to put it up there, Sean. Let's go to Oxford next. Let's go Kentucky and Ole Miss. Alex, we talked about this game at length yesterday, actually, with Ole Miss playing their first conference game here. Kentucky playing their first road game. You have Ole Miss as a top 5 team in the country. They've blasted everything in their path. They haven't really played anyone yet, though. 17.5 down to as low as 15. Now it's 16 in this one. That total's bounced down as well to 51.5, which is odd to say in an Ole Miss game, Alex.
Yeah, but, I mean, you guys were talking about it yesterday as well. Kentucky's defense is really good, and we saw that with Georgia. Now, clear look-ahead spot against South Carolina where they just were not ready for that game. But I still like the favorite here. And I didn't do anything, but yesterday I was watching the market and I saw 14.5s out there. I just didn't have that certain account. But I was willing to lay 14.5 with Ole Miss here over Kentucky. They just have been too inconsistent. And on the flip side, we have Jackson Dart, who has been very good for Ole Miss, completing 80% of his passes, 13.1 yards per play, 12 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Again, not great competition. We'll learn a lot today, but I think Ole Miss will be ready. More than ready for this first conference game against Kentucky.
This is one of those where if you got Kentucky early, I think you did well here. North of 17. My concern is that Kentucky's offense has looked dreadful against real competition so far this year. Against the non-SEC teams, they're 0-2 in conference. They've looked great against the non-SEC teams. South Carolina, they kept turning the ball over. Mm-hmm. And Georgia's defense is awesome. We get that. Scored 12. Quite frankly, Kentucky still should have had a shot to win that game at the end, but Mark Stoops inexplicably punted. Still can't believe that 2.5 weeks later now. At these numbers, everything seems about right. It would only be a lean to Kentucky still taking points, but once we know the key numbers. Going north to 17.5. Very difficult in order to justify that now. All right, let's go to Manhattan next. Not the Big Apple, the Little Apple in Kansas. This number just moved at all shops. Chris and company were ahead of that move. Up to 6 on Kansas State in this game against Oklahoma State. Alex, both of these teams, it was Murphy's Law last week for both of these teams. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. Oklahoma State ended up losing that game by 3 against Utah. If you watch that game, you know that is not indicative to what the final what that game was. Utah really kicked their behinds the whole game.
Yes, they did.
Really was a 3-score game that Oklahoma State made close late on soft defense from Utah. Kansas State, I said this on the show yesterday, Alex. 6-0 late night game. All right, go on with my night. Check in about 90 minutes later, and it's 31-9, and it's like, whoa, what the hell happened here? I will say, 5 earlier in the week, I like Kansas State. Now at the bigger number, not so much. I still think Kansas State's the better football team, even with what we saw from them last week. This feels like a better bounce-back spot for them than it is for Oklahoma State.
I agree completely. Especially I was on the right side of Kansas State last week against BYU. Was not expecting that kind of game there between those two, but it was a good spot with the games that Kansas State had, and that's why I played it. So I do think this is a good spot for Kansas State. Alan Bowen just has not looked great for Oklahoma State. It's weird with the returning production that the Cowboys brought. I thought that this was going to be a top team, and maybe they just got a little complacent. And, last year they really had to work to make it to that conference championship game, and maybe they just expected it. But also, we always talk about Ollie Gordon, and everybody has shut him down. He has not had more than 50 rushing yards against an FBS school. So that's a major concern that Oklahoma State needs to try and get fixed, getting their best running back going.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily Ollie Gordon's fault that this has gone on so far this year.
I agree.
Yeah.
They need to.
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
I just saying that offensive line really is not. Oklahoma State usually has very underratedly good offensive lines. It has not been the case so far this year. It also didn't help them that the quarterback play last week against Utah was straight abysmal, with Bowman getting benched midway and then Rangel coming in and actually being worse than Bowman was a week ago against Utah. All right. Let's go to two teams that I keep betting their games and I keep losing because I obviously can't figure these teams out. With Texas Tech hosting Cincinnati, and I can't help myself, Alex White. I'm back at it again. We're fading the Bearcats again for the third straight week. We got to get it right at some point, right? Texas Tech has looked like a totally different team since Taj Brooks has come back.
Yes.
That game at Wazoo, Brooks wasn't there. They got absolutely crushed by Washington State. With Brooks back, that offense has looked high-end the last 2 weeks. They put 66 on North Texas. I thought that game probably was closer than the final score indicated last week against Arizona State, 30-22. It kind of felt more field goal game-ish than touchdown and two game-ish. But Texas Tech, to me, is still the better football team than Cincinnati. At 3, I'm comfortable laying it with Texas Tech, which means you probably should be all over Cincinnati at this point, everyone.
I don't know. I'm not there with Cincinnati yet either. I think this number is right. I actually have Texas Tech as a 4-point favorite, so it is a lean to the home team there. But I think you skipped last week. There's no way you were on Houston last week, so you must have bet on Cincy
No, I was on Houston last week.
I don't remember that.
I did it quietly, intentionally, Alex. Accountability is important in this. I have to at least bring that up, that I lost that. But yes.
Well, hey, I said last week, I don't think Houston's as bad as we think. And
it might be worse than we think,
it might be worse. There's a big 0 on the board.
Let's keep it in the Big 12. Kansas to TCU. Kansas was in the Disappointment Bowl last week. They were the more disappointed ones, blowing a double-digit lead in the last 5 minutes, losing to West Virginia by 4. Now they go to Arrowhead because all their conference home games are going to be at Arrowhead this year, Alex. They welcome TCU, who, talk about biting the dust the last 2 weeks. You blow a 3-touchdown lead at home to Central Florida 2 weeks ago. And then last week against an SMU team that hadn't found their offense yet this year, you give up 66. Now, part of that is that TCU turned the ball over 5 times, but you still gave up 66. TCU actually, by the way, outgained SMU by over 100 yards. But those turnovers played the difference in the end. Alex, if this was Kansas's offense from a year ago, I wouldn't even hesitate and bang this thing over. But the problem with Kansas has been that their offense just gets into these funks because Daniels is turning the ball over. Daniels has 10 turnovers already this year. More turnovers this year in 4 games than he did all of 2 seasons ago, which he was one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. I would lean to Kansas. The only concern now, though, since Kansas is off to this bad start, playing in a stadium that holds 65,000 people, I'd be shocked if they're approaching 30K today. It's not going to be a good environment at Arrowhead for Kansas today.
Well, we need to fly Margaret out and whoever else we can get there because I need the Jayhawks to come through today. I did lay the points, and now you have me reminiscent because we had some good dogs last week. SMU, BYU, there's not a lot of great spots this week. So yeah. I'm banking on Kansas getting their offense going here. We know that they do have a really good head coach, and we know Jalen Daniels is a good quarterback. We'll see if they can get it going. But it's really about TCU's defense, who has not been good this year, and they are 68th in the country. Kansas's defense has been okay, and they are still ranked 30th. So I think they can hang in this one. I did lay the 1.5, but still anything under a field goal, basically the same. So we'll see.
Keeping it in the Big 12, Alex White, 2 new Big 12 teams, of course, Arizona and Utah. Where have you heard this one before? Cam Rising is a game-time decision. Not in for the eye roll because that's all it is at this point. The market is treating it, I think properly so, that we won't see Cam Rising today because Utah's code word for game time, for out, has been game time decision with Rising over the last 2 years. Highest 12.5, down to 8, 47.5 the total. I said this on the show yesterday, Alex. Even if Rising doesn't play, I don't trust Arizona with the way they've looked so far this year. Unless if Ted McMillan is uncoverable, which is always in play. For Arizona, I don't have much confidence, even if it is Isaac Wilson for the Utes in Arizona covering more than a touchdown on the road in Salt Lake today.
I'm bummed that I missed the best of the total because I would have liked to go under, especially with how Utah's defense has looked and what they did to Oklahoma State last week. I think that would be the best play. 47.5 is getting a little bit too low, but both these two teams play slow, and we know Utah runs the ball 60% of the time, which is 32nd most in the country, and then they play super slow, 31.3 seconds per play. Arizona, shockingly, when I saw these numbers, because last year they really wanted to play fast, and I know there's a coaching change and quarterback change as well, but now they are slowing it down, taking 30.5 seconds per play as well, which is good for 123rd in the country. So, I mean, if Arizona wants to hang in this game, they're going to have to try and keep their defense off the field.
Yeah, Arizona, look, it's been a mixed bag. They were awful against Kansas State on both sides of the ball in that game. It's weird to say after Washington had a zillion chances to beat Rutgers last night and just couldn't quite do it. But they missed Jed Fish. Arizona, it's pretty clear based off of what we've seen from Fafita after week 1 that he's just not the same guy that he was with Fish. And that's not to say Brandon's not going to be a good coach down there. It's just that Fish and Fafita really meshed great at head coach and quarterback in Tucson. All right, let's go to, well, this will be a conference matchup in 2 years from now. Boise State hosting Wazoo here today on the blue turf at Albertson Stadium. Alex, 6.5 right now in this game, was as high as 7.5, total 65.5 for Boise hosting Wazoo. Cougars quietly undefeated so far through the first month.
Yes, they are. They are 4-0, but I am going to make the case that they could be 2-2 because I think they were pretty fortunate to get that win over Washington. And then they survived that double overtime game against San Jose State, who I really don't have rated all that high. I laid the points here with Boise State. This is another one of my favorites. Anything under a touchdown, I think you're okay. It's a late game. It's a high total. It's going to be a lot of back and forth, but ultimately, I think Boise State is the better team here. And Madison has been good. Quarterback, his third year here. 6.9 yards per play and 5-1 touchdown interception. So took the home team, laid the points.
Boise State's really good. And I'm not quite sure why they have not been respected like past Boise State teams have been. Because Ashton Genty's the best player in the country to me. Yes, I genuinely believe that a guy in the Mountain West is the best player in the country. If he was in the SEC, he'd be the Heisman favorite right now. That's how good Ashton Genty is. I'm with you on Wazoo. And I watched a lot of that game against San Jose State last week. This is a flawed defense, and it is look, I know people really like John Mateer at that quarterback position. I think he's relatively limited against real defenses. And Boise State and Washington are the two best defenses that Wazoo has seen so far. And I still think Washington should have won that game with the way that played out at Lumen a few weeks ago. I think this is a run out today. Boise off the bye, back in the top 25. They're a few weeks away from the big showdown here in Vegas, which will set up, more likely than not, a potential rematch in the Mountain West title game, even though craziness around UNLV's program may cause a little difference on that. But, Alex, I think this is a total run out. I like Boise big in this one. Very comfortable to lay 6.5.
I hate seeing that 25 next to their name, though, because we know how it is. Once you're finally ranked, and then that's usually a good fade spot. But Boise State has been there before.
Yeah.
So they'll be okay.
It's not like it was with Northern Illinois, where it was the easiest. Hey, why are they like top 25? Okay, whatever. Boise, I had Boise power rated in my top 20. and closer to 15 than 25 at this point. They're legitimately excellent this year. All right, let's go to Austin. I'll be quick here. This is a conference game. I get it, but it's also Texas by 38 right now behind us. That is market high, by the way, Alex. When I know everyone was waiting with bated breath on that, but 37.5 elsewhere. Quinn Ewers not expected to play. Makes sense. Get him ready for Red River in 2 weeks. Texas is a bye. Mississippi State is the lowest power-rated Power 4 team now, and it isn't particularly close. I'd only lay it with Texas. I know that's gross. I know it's a lot of points in a conference game, but I don't see how Mississippi State, now without Blake Shapen for the rest of the year, I don't see how Mississippi State scores more than 10, and Texas is getting to the 50s in this game, Alex.
No, we learned a lot about Mississippi State 2 weeks ago, right, when they lost 41-17 to Toledo, and then we thought they could hang around with Florida, and that wasn't
not good.
No, it was not good, and now they lose Blake Shapen. So, yeah, there's nothing you can do here unless you want to lay the big number, but that's too many points for me.
I'd only lay it. Not saying I will, but I have no interest in taking even that many points in a conference game, which is loony bin. But
hey, one of my friends last week, she was texting me and asking me my plays, and I asked her, and she's like, I laid 49.5 with Penn State, and I was like, you did what? Easy. That covered easy.
Yeah, that made sense. 56-0 on Penn State a week ago against Kent. All right, Baylor, who should have beat Colorado last week, Alex. Of course, they didn't. We know what happened. Hail Mary, fumble going into the end zone in overtime. Baylor loses and doesn't cover. Probably, I would say, the worst money line beat of the week if you had Baylor last week as an underdog in Boulder. They're back home, and this is, Chris brought this up yesterday, and I agree with him. This is the classic Pro V Joe game. Classic. Everyone just saw BYU smash Kansas State in Big 12 after dark last week. Now, we're 3 in this game with Baylor at home. Was as high at 3.5. Alex, I'll tell you this. I actually really like the total in this game. I like this thing under because BYU last week, even with that result, if we just look at the offensive numbers in that game, they were really average. They were average. They only averaged 5 yards a play. The biggest thing with last week was that Avery Johnson was the one who was making mistakes. Retzlaff, who's been a turnover machine, didn't turn the ball over at all for BYU. And BYU also got the best punt return of probably what will be the college football season. Baylor's defense, I still think, is pretty good, even though they had an off night at Boulder a week ago. I'm surprised his total has been banged up. I like this under 47.
I am on Baylor here, laying the points. I just think it is a good kind of fade spot of BYU after that big win. Who they were outgained by Kansas State 367 to 241. So I think it's a get right spot for Baylor, who has had me nervous because I did take the points with them against Utah a few weeks ago. They barely covered. That's when Cam Rising was injured in that game. They lost that one 23-12. But I think that they have improved since then. Big win over Air Force 31-3. So we saw their defense step up in that one. And then last week they very well could have won that game against Colorado. So Baylor Bears for me, another small home favorite that I am on.
I would only lean that way too. I just don't. I'm not a huge. I don't think this Baylor team's really any good either. I don't think either of these teams are any good. I had BYU.
I think BYU is actually pretty good. We'll see how they do in this spot.
I just am so concerned at some point with BYU. Their quarterback play, I really don't think Ratzlav's any good. I really think they're playing the wrong guy. I think Bohannon should be playing. But if they're winning games, they're not going to bench Ratzlav.
Right.
And it would not shock me if this is one of those games where he just starts turning the ball over like crazy and your Baylor Bears get there on the cover at 3 for this one. This is an early game, by the way, 9 a.m. All right, let's go to Houston next. How about Iowa State? Quietly, because they haven't played a conference game yet, quietly under the radar, got that big win in the Cyhawk a few weeks ago. They go on the road to Houston here, 16-point road favorites. Houston, other than the game against Oklahoma and Rice, those 2 games they've looked okay. Looked awful against UNLV, looked beyond awful last week against Cincinnati. Alex, I don't love laying big favorites on the road in conference play, but this would probably be one of the opportunities where you could probably get away with it here with Iowa State.
Yeah, that's the only way I would play this. I do not trust this Houston team at all, and Donovan Smith in this offense, and they really have not been able to get in sync for the season. And then on the other side, Iowa State's been really good, and Rocco Beck has last week against Arkansas State, 3 touchdowns, 11.3 yards per play on 18 pass attempts. So that would be the way I would play. I actually did play a little bit under. I believe I got somewhere in the 44 though, or 44 and a half. So might be more of a play on Houston not being able to get their offense going after that shutout last week. You would hope they could get a few points on the board, but I don't have a lot of faith in them right now.
In all honesty, now with looking at these numbers, I'm a little surprised this game is told where it's at right now. I would have expected it actually to come even lower right now, 43 and a half. But again, look at that at 16 and 43 and a half. That's such look at that in a conference game. You just don't see that very often in a conference game with that big of a favorite and that low of a total. So it's hard to really fully get there.
Well, in Iowa State, I mean, we saw last year too, they've been one of the most explosive offenses.
Yes,
so that's the scary part. I'm really banking on Houston not putting up any points at all.
They are one of the teams you don't necessarily think of explosive offense, but like you said, Alex, they led the Big 12 in explosive plays a year ago. They do have 2 great wide receivers, so we'll take advantage of that today there in Houston. All right, let's go to Auburn and Oklahoma next. Oh, boy. 2 teams without a quarterback at the moment. Michael Hawkins Jr. will get the start for Oklahoma. They bench Jackson Arnold pretty quickly, all things considered. Auburn is going back to Thorne. Been a revolving door of bad for quarterback at Auburn. With that said, the market's mostly been on Auburn in this game. A little bit of no buyback yet on Oklahoma. Auburn won in this one. OU opened 3-point favorites on the road, Alex White.
Absolutely nothing for me in this one. I thought the opening number, Oklahoma -2, was the correct number here. So I guess it's a little bit of a lean to that dog, but I don't know what to do with either of these teams with them trading quarterbacks. And Auburn has been pretty disappointing this year, I must say. I thought they were going to be better than what we have seen so far.
It's hard to be worse than they've been, right? I mean, they lose to Cal at home last week. I mean, that game. Sometimes college football will make my brain break. And that Arkansas-Auburn game, it felt like every time I looked at it, someone was doing something stupid. Whether it was running backwards 10 yards or turning the ball over. Arkansas won the game by a field goal. I will say, apologies to our guy Sean, who's the resident OU fan here. I think I was right on what this Oklahoma team was coming into this year. It's hard to win in a high-end conference with no quarterback. And it is just that quarterback situation is untenable at Oklahoma. Their defense is still good.
Yeah.
I thought they did more than enough last week against a really high-end offense in Tennessee. Just hard to win without a quarterback in Oklahoma. And by the way, we went through their schedule yesterday, Alex White, on Football Frenzy. I'll do it one more time for everyone. After today, here's Oklahoma's remaining schedule. Red River against Texas, South Carolina, at Ole Miss, Maine. Congratulations, Black Bears. You're the sacrificial lamb in that one. At Missouri, Alabama at LSU. Brutal.
So you're saying if you're in a college survivor, you missed your opportunity to take Oklahoma.
Hey, take them against Maine on November the 2nd.
If it's offered, that is circled, but I doubt it.
If it's offered, yes. Absolutely. All right, let's go to, let's go just down the road from here next, just due north at Allegiant Stadium. Boy, what a week for UNLV, say the very least. Of course, Matthew Sluka leaving the team over an NIL dispute. Haj Malik Williams will get the start for UNLV. Fresno, look, Tedford leaves the program because of health issues before the year. They seemingly have been okay without Tedford there. 3-1, only loss coming in the Big House. Alex, I feel like you missed the number on both sides here. I don't think this is bettable at the current number. If you liked UNLV, you had to get the pick when it came down after the Sluka news. And if you like Fresno, you had an opportunity at 4 earlier in the week. So at the current number, don't force the action. I would say this is an in-game game. I'm very curious to see how UNLV comes out with everything that's gone on around that program. I think it goes one of two ways. Either they look awesome and this is a beat down their way, or they are flat because of everything that has come their way this week.
We're hoping for the first one. A lot of times teams can rally around and really come together with situations like this. Seems like the team is happy with Haj Malik Williams. And it was a quarterback competition going into the year. Both of these two are pretty much rated the same, both dual threat guys, which is important because UNLV is running the fourth most in the country. The three teams before them, the service academies. So, I mean, they were utilizing Luka with his legs as a dual threat quarterback. They also have running back by committee that they will still have there. Besides, I believe one running back also followed him too. But
fourth string guy.
I believe in the Rebels. I think that they will get it done. I'm with you, though. I did not lay the points. I did not jump in on pick. I just stayed away from this because Fresno side, I do think they are really good, and I know Chris Andrews has them pretty high up in the Mountain West. Mikey Keene, really good quarterback, if not one of the best in the Mountain West. So he's done a good job there for that team. So it'll be an interesting one. I know Fresno State has the record as of late. I mean, they've been very close games, but Fresno State has found a way to come out on top in most of them as of late.
This is a gigantic game for not only the Mountain West championship game, but also for the college football playoff, because Fresno State's schedule, remember, Wazoo and Oregon State has the schedule share, but those games don't count as conference games. So Fresno State doesn't play Boise. And Fresno State, after this, I mean, toughest conference game is San Jose State at home. Their schedule is really easy in Mountain West play after this. If they win in Vegas today, we all thought, hey, UNLV, Boise State, when they play the second time after the regular season game, doesn't matter too much. When they play the second time in a conference title game, that will be the moment. Fresno can spoil that party today. If they win today, Fresno State might be hosting that darn game when it's all said and done, and it's a whole different look potentially for the Mountain West and the college football playoff. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, Vinny Magliulo will join us, and don't worry, when we get back, we're going to the big one down south. Alabama hosting Georgia, our plays, and a perspective from behind the book when we get back here on Sports by the Book.
South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book, South Point Studio. Jeff Parles, Alex White, Vinny Magliulo is on set with us. Good morning, Vincenzo.
Good morning, Jeff. Alex, you guys are doing a fine job. Ann is back there. I see Sean. You giving Sean a hard time on his Oklahoma Sooners, I heard?
That's okay.
Wow.
It's a nice little fun back and forth.
Okay. All right.
It's okay. Well, Sean will give it back at some point.
Oh, listen,
We know that.
I mean, that's a must here in the studio.
So, Vinny, let's go to the big game. We're going out of rotation number order, but we have to mention it here with you on set, right at the top here.
Sure.
Alabama hosting Georgia.
Yeah.
Alex, what was the last time Alabama was a home dog?
2007.
2007. So it's been quite a while since the Tide were a dog at home, and the Dogs of Georgia are 1.5-point favorites with a total of 49.5 in this game.
Great game to not only to bet, right, for folks betting, but great game to book. You know, we have a lot of fun doing that. These are the kinds of games that on the college schedule that, frankly, we book them like they're NFL games, and rightfully so, right? Let's face it. These are two terrific teams. You know, again, we don't really nothing against the pollsters, but that's not polls don't determine prices. But these two in the power ratings world are also very close, And then when Chris put this up on Monday, was probably below the market. It opened 1 here at South Point, went to 1.5, and it's gone a little bit back and forth. We actually kind of had Alabama the home favorite. I mean, but because of home field. I mean, there's in the power ratings, there's probably about a point and a half difference. So and this is a strong home field. Let's face it. So, this is a great game to book from our perspective. So it's a lot of fun.
When the number came out, I did think the wrong team was favored, so I did jump on Alabama +2, not for much, and this isn't tied up in some of my round robins or my other big plays, but I am on Bama. But then I didn't add in like the revenge factor from last year from the conference game, which would give it back to Georgia here. So it's going to be a great game. Another stat from Felica, though, or trend from Felica, Kalen DeBoer has been an underdog 10 times as a head coach. He's won 7 of those 10 outright and 8-2 ATS in those 10 games. So I like that one, too. It's going to be different. Jalen Milroe has been playing very good, so we'll see how he does today.
Roll Tide. That's all I got to say.
There you go.
There
you go.
All I'll say with this game, for Georgia's perspective, because Vinny, Alex, they've played one dominant half so far.
That was against the second half. The
second half against Clemson.
Right.
That was the Georgia Bulldogs we've come accustomed to.
Mm-hmm.
In their other 3 games, Tennessee Tech, who cares? You're supposed to beat them by 45.
Mm-hmm.
They were lucky to get out of Lexington with a win.
They definitely
were
escaped.
lucky.
They escaped. Kroger
now,
Field.
It feels like Georgia plays one game like that a year at this point where they don't play well. They are on the road. They're sloppy. Their defense bails them out when it's all said and done. But if you do that today, with the way Jalen Milroe is starting to get more comfortable with Kalen DeBoer's system, you're going to get beat. And you might get beat by multiple scores if you play like you did against Kentucky. And for Alabama, the one question that I have, what they were able to do last year in the SEC title game, of course, totally different coaching staff. They were able to confuse Carson Beck. Are they able to do that again today? If they are, I'm with Alex. I thought the wrong team was favored when the numbers came out, and I still think the wrong team is favored right now.
Well, Georgia's going to get plenty of support, right? I mean, let's face it. When it went down to 1, obviously they did lay it. And the thing, you mentioned Georgia and their defense, particularly against Clemson. Their defense has had some injuries,
right?
And I think they're hopeful to get several members of that defense back today, which they're going to need. So, look. A terrific game. It's in a great spot too. 4:30 Pacific time. There's great action on the first half. The second half will be terrific, and the end game will be real good, especially if it's a close game. So if this game is like the first half of the Clemson game, the Georgia Clemson game, right? That makes for a real good end game as well. So Alex, you're probably. If you liked the 2, did you sprinkle a little money line in on Alabama?
I didn't.
No?
I didn't earlier on.
Right.
No. I was kind of trying just to jump in Monday where I saw the numbers, right? And to see where they had moved and if I was on the right side. So smaller bets there and did jump in on it. I don't even know if I had money line available actually when I did it. That might have been the problem.
Yeah.
Real quick, Vinny, you mentioned injuries in this game. Michael Williams, who is Georgia's best defensive player, arguably, is a game-time decision.
Yeah.
So we will see. It's not like the Cam Rising situation where they say game-time decision, and I think we all know what's happening there. But Michael Williams, legitimate game-time decision for Georgia tonight, and he'll have all day because that's a 6:30 local time start at Bryant-Denny. All right, let's get some games we haven't gotten to. A game that starts in 5 minutes that I want to hit. Not the most intriguing game, but it is the defending national champions, Michigan, hosting Minnesota. Vinny, it's been mostly Wolverine action here. Low is 8.5, up to 11, and
just went to 11 a little. This morning.
That total, as we talked about yesterday, it ain't Iowa, but it's still 34.5.
It's pretty close. It's actually, this is rivaling one of those. But I think that's what you're seeing there with the total is a byproduct of, which, by the way, the total did open 38. So the total being down to now 34.5 speaks to Minnesota, not obviously not known for their scoring.
Nope.
And Michigan loves to run the ball. I mean, we saw what they did last week against SC. So that's, clock moving, and no real shock that, I mean, at some point I have to believe that we'll get some over money. But I mean, the game is going to kick here in a little bit, so I'm not so sure. I was surprised, frankly, that it kept coming down. But I mean, we're looking to bet the over. This is the time to do it.
I will just say Iowa, Minnesota last week, 31-14 final score, so that would go over very easily. I kind of used that to handicap this one, which I did make Michigan a 12-point favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you missed the best of it. If you got 8 or 8.5, laid that with Michigan, I like that. But I mean, Michigan's defense is just as good as Iowa, so I think they'll be able to stop this Minnesota. No, there's concerns offensively, but as long as they can run the football, get some points on the board, I think they'll be just fine.
And the early money did come in on Minnesota. I mean, we're down to 8.5, and then kind of went back up the ladder, but it's gone through the opener of 10 to now 11.
I wish a book would put up total pass attempts in this game by Michigan, and I want to bet it under as long as it is double digits. We saw last week. I mean,
the betting book? There's not enough for you to bet out there right now.
But I'm telling you, Vinny, this is Michigan. What we saw last week from Michigan, that's what they're going to have to do. They are just going to have to bludgeon the opponent with their offensive line in a run game
and play defense.
Yeah, right. That is the only way they're going to. Which kind of I know what your numbers were, Alex, but it kind of makes me scared to don't bet a bad number now. But boy, it is hard to justify laying double figures with this offense the way they're going to have to score moving forward. All right, real quick here. Don't want to spend too much time on UCLA as a 24.5-point underdog at home against Oregon. Vinny, it just we talked about it yesterday. This Bruin program has fallen a long way, and quite frankly, I don't think this number is wrong at all. If anything, that 24 when you opened it there was pretty juicy to lay with the Ducks.
Got as high as 25.5. I think we were on yesterday with Chris, and it was 25.5. So came back down. Look, I mean, that's just a play on the price, and you're getting a home team with 3.5 touchdowns. So that was the take there. So back down to 24.5, 55, and a 54.5 now. So it's you got such a big favorite, and typically there would be money coming in on the over with that kind of favorite, but came in on the under, and I think that's a reflection of UCLA. Yeah, UCLA's offense.
I have no play at the current number. Oregon found themselves against Oregon State.
Looks like they're turning things around.
Themselves.
We'll see. We'll find out there. But again, 3.5 touchdown favorite. So let's see how some of these other games come up.
We talked about this yesterday, Vinny. A&M has been the side that the people love at the Jerry Dome.
Yeah.
Up to 6 from as low as 3.5, total 51. It's not even like there's big injury news in this game either. The people just like A&M in this game.
Yeah, and I think that give A&M credit for the way they responded off of that really disappointing loss, tough home loss to start the season against Notre Dame. And very quietly, they've just gone about their business and taking care of it. And so this is a pretty one-sided. The initial play on Monday when the numbers went up Monday morning here at South Point went from 4 to 3.5, but it's been a steady flow of A&M money now. For yesterday we were on, I think it was 5.5, and now they continue to play them all night, so up to 6.
I am on this favorite as well. I jumped in at 4 here.
Good, Alex.
Contrast of styles, but Vinny just pretty much made my point for me. I like what Mike Elko is doing here, and I do like how they responded. I mean, going to Florida, winning that game 33-20 was impressive. And then, I mean, Bowling Green, not a huge win over them, but still doing what they have to do. Still don't know about the quarterback. Wigman is back and starting, right?
The expectation is he will he is hopeful to go, but I have to say that the way the market's played it, that the expectation is he is going to play today.
That's what I thought too.
Game time decision technically, but I don't think the market would have been that aggressive if he was not going to go in this one. All right, let's go to Notre Dame Stadium next, Vinny. 6.5 down from 7 at the peak, 46 the total on this one. Louisville had the bus because of the remains of Hurricane Helene. Okay, not a bad bus ride, only 4.5 hours from Louisville to South Bend. This has been a fun betting game, this one with Notre Dame and Louisville.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good game here as well. 5.5 got as high as 7, which was the take, right? I mean, a play on the number for sure. That's the classic example of playing a number more than just a team, right? But Louisville can score too. They're a solid team. Yeah. Let's face it. Notre Dame, especially after that home loss to Northern Illinois, that shocker. Really, not a lot of room to falter. So. And I think that's the belief by the bettors too. And listen, and they play a pretty difficult schedule. This is a tough out here. So this one here is going to this may be a toggler going back and forth. And again, midday, 12:30, good position.
Feels like a good Notre Dame spot. I mean, this is the games that they definitely get up for. It's those ones that they take too lightly that they seem to
classic look ahead, right, for them in that loss.
So I made them 7.5 point favorite here, so nothing huge, but lean towards Notre Dame.
I thought 7 was a good take on Louisville.
Yeah.
Wouldn't go any lower than that. This is all of a sudden here for Notre Dame. I mean, we said this at the beginning of the year. I mean, if you don't have that Northern Illinois loss, Notre Dame is just waltzing right into the college football playoff. The only reason there's any question whatsoever is, will the committee hold losing to a team in the MAC that might end up with 4 losses when it's all said and done? Mm-hmm. Will they actually hold that loss against them a lot or not? So we'll see how it all plays out. But Notre Dame can help themselves if they put it on Louisville.
Right. Well, it'll be an impact. It'll be a consideration, but it's also going to be impacted by what happens with other teams, right? Other schools.
Don't forget that team was ranked, though, Jeff, in the top 25 at one point. So.
Oh, yes. The well-deserved top 25 for Northern Illinois.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex.
Good job, Alex.
Penn State and Illinois real quick. We mentioned this yesterday. Penn State is dominant in games lined between 7 and 24. Chris Felica on this stat from yesterday. Penn State is 17-0-1 against the number since 2000 when favored between 7 and 24. Now, they are dominant in this sort of spot. Illinois has been one of the bigger surprises so far this year.
Great.
But
great win last week.
Great week. Yeah. Two wins against teams that were ranked at the time when they beat them. 18 in this one, Vinny, and it's all been Penn State action for the most part.
Yeah, Penn State opened 18. Initial take with Illinois off of that. But listen, now sitting at 18. This is a whiteout game tonight too as well, prime time.
Always tough.
Difficult spot. I mean, you go and you win a very tough physical game at Nebraska last week, and now you're going up against a team that's really, when you look at their schedule, look at the Nittany Lions schedule, pretty favorable, right? I mean, they do have to go to the Coliseum and play SC. They get Ohio State at home, right? So this is a team to certainly keep our eyes on for the postseason.
I made the number right where it is. Yeah. Just want to say pretty impressive from both these quarterbacks, right? With Altmaier in Illinois, what he's done this year. And then Drew Aller on the other side has been very good for Penn State as well. We know he has been in the past too, just not so much in the biggest games. But so good quarterback play, should be a good game.
Yeah, should be. Yeah.
I like Illinois. I know I'm going against years of trends on this, and Penn State is a legit top 10 team, but Illinois' defense is good enough to at least hang here. Could they lose this game 24-3? Yeah, wouldn't shock me if that happens, but they should be at least to hang in this game a little bit longer than people think.
What's the first half? That was Boston College, right, that we were in here watching against Penn State?
Bowling Green. Bowling Green, I think, won the first half against Penn State. 10.
There you
on
go.
that one for the first half. Let's get two last ones before we get out of here. Wisconsin, USC, Vinny, quick hitter, 14.5 on the Trojans, but it has been Wisconsin action over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, we know Van Dyke is done for the year, right? But it's a take of a couple of touchdowns with Wisconsin here, I think. But USC coming back home now. We know their defense is better than last year. Certainly, we saw that firsthand. Tough loss last week. Great game against Michigan, and I think here there's going to be continued support for SC as we get further into the day, though.
Nothing for me in this one.
If it gets to 14, I'd lay it.
Mm-hmm.
If it gets to 14, and there is a 14 in the market, so yes, lay. I have no problem laying this. Wisconsin just is not any good, especially with Van Dyke. They can't score. And USC off of the loss last week. This is a nice little bounce back against an overmatched
Coming
team.
home.
Ohio State's at Michigan State. This is in prime time. You missed the best of it if you had wanted the Spartans. It was as high as 25. Now it's gone through 24. It's 23.5. I'll say this. I still think this number's too high. Michigan State is.
Look at the first half for this one too.
Well, that's 13.5 on the sheet in front of me, which makes me think that the current number's got to be 13. Well, there's still 13.5. That doesn't move.
Yeah. So
I would be a lean to Michigan State both first half and full game in this game for me.
they're better than we had anticipated, frankly.
Much better.
And so, and from our side of the counter, you have to. Those are the adjustments that you make. You don't overreact, but you do have to adjust. And some teams were, kind of under our radar early on. When I'm talking like in July, when we did the games of the year, so you still have to do everybody's power ratings and things. But teams like Michigan State, Syracuse, Arkansas, and what speaks to that is the first thing that spoke to it were what professional bettors did. In terms of how they bet and took the points in many of those instances with those teams that I mentioned, and then now here we are on the eve of October, and you're looking at the results. So that's the exercise.
Only concern here is Aiden Childs has had quite a few turnovers. Already has 8 interceptions on the year.
Good point.
But Michigan State has been better, but we just need him to play a clean game.
If he plays a clean game, this should be a 2-touchdown game. I really do believe that. And Ohio State, they've started slow also in these games as well. So first half, first quarter, worse angles to look at for this game. All right, we've gone over. That's all the time we definitely have for today. Alex and I are back tomorrow in a little under 24 hours, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, getting you ready for the NFL. Miami has finally named the starting quarterback, by the way, so we'll tell you about that tomorrow morning as well. Vinny, pleasure as always.
Good to be with you,
Alex, good luck on all your plays as always.
You too.
Sean, Ann, thank you. I'm Jeff Parles. If you've watched us, if you're in the chat, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We'll see you again tomorrow at 9 a.m. here on Sports by the Book.